Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, I regret to inform you leftoids that I think it's too little, too late. All of a sudden it seems like the reality of their situation is finally starting to kick in. Who would have thought that investing everything into this guy,
true international effort to pressure,
who would have thought that that would be a bad idea? I don't know, it was a hard one to predict, but obviously Joe Biden has been a monumental disaster. Things aren't getting better, his brain isn't magically fixing itself. In fact, as we keep covering, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Joe Biden's on the campaign trail, and he's suffering more and more gaffes, and it's of course gaffe season. Here are the highlights just from this week alone.
That fall, he decided to, look, I shouldn't get into this probably. For the lost PAC Act. Back when she was 12 years old, this investment's helped HBCUs do everything from bills to Congo in the neighborhood. And
the guy's not even speaking English. It's been a utter, humiliating disaster if you're a Democrat, and they've had time to change course. They could have actually had a real nomination process. They could have allowed challengers. They could have applied grassroots pressure for him to step down and replace him with somebody more competent. But nope, Democrats decided that they were going to double down, and now all of a sudden that the polling data is suggesting a not so favorable outcome for them. Now that Joe Biden's been trailing in the polls for, more than 6 months, well, now all of a sudden they're talking about possibly replacing him. A last minute little switcheroo. Yep, takes me back to the words that I started this video with. Too little, too late. I don't know what these people are thinking. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so I was watching the news earlier and this popped up. It seems as though 538's Nate Silver is attempting to lay out a strategy to possibly replace Joe Biden.
Polling guru Nate Silver put it pretty starkly this week, saying if Biden is trailing by 3 points in August, he'll be a big underdog. And if it's 5 or 6 points, it's unsalvageable. And Biden at that point should consider stepping aside, Brad.
They're following the numbers, and if he falls too far behind, it's going to be a doomsday scenario for the Democrats. I was never one to buy into these theories that the Democrats were going to switch Joe Biden at the last second. Right at the convention, they were going to swap Michelle Obama, take Joe Biden out. I just never thought it feasible, and I still kind of don't think it's feasible, or at least I don't think it's good strategy. But they might actually be gearing up for this. What other option do they have? Imminent defeat? And it makes me think about the debates, as Bill Maher rightly pointed out the other day.
This is what's so interesting about it. I've never seen a summer debate, not for the presidential elections. They're always in October, right before the election. This one, June 27th, they haven't had the convention yet.
Well, they're not getting any younger.
They want only 2 debates with 2 left-wing networks in very controlled environments ahead of the Democrat convention. What's the purpose of that? Usually the debates happen right before people are heading to the polls, but this time they want to do it right before the convention. It seems like they're preparing for a doomsday scenario. A scenario where Joe Biden fumbles so bad, so hard, despite the fact that they've essentially rigged the debates in his favor and they're going to pump him with all kinds of, adrenaline cocktails, where despite all of their efforts and all of their manipulation, Joe Biden takes to the stage and his first words are, "My butt's been wiped."
my butt's been wiped.
Given the scenario where he gets turned around and mopped the floor with, well, at least it's still June, and at least they still have time to replace him ahead of the convention. It's getting more and more dire, and their actions more and more desperate. And speaking of how dire it is, let's do a little bit more analysis. We were just talking about Nate Silver, of course. He's the numbers guy that runs 538. Well, if we look at the 538 average of net approval ratings at this time in office, well, Joe Biden's in some rough shape. Just take a look at how bad it truly is. He's got a negative 17.7% rating. That's not only bad, that's like 50% worse than Herbert Walker Bush, who's above him at number 10. He is the least popular president in modern American history. And of course, let's add bad news to bad news. Charlie Kirk tweeted this. Amy Walter from the Cook Political Report says that for Joe Biden to be losing to Donald Trump by this margin is, quote, unsustainable at this point for an incumbent. And he asks the same question that I'm asking. Are they signaling a Joe Biden replacement at the August convention?
Look, we've seen in the past, Mika, that candidates who are seen as maybe not as strong on the economy
ultimately win an election, like, say, Barack Obama in 2012. But to be losing by this margin, that is unsustainable at this point for an incumbent.
Unsustainable is the word that they used. Well, the numbers really do indicate that that's the case. According to Cook Political's new swing state poll, Joe Biden's headed towards electoral devastation. He's down in every single swing state except for Wisconsin. And that's a head-to-head matchup. The numbers get worse when RFK Jr. is part of the race, like we've said a million times. And so now the Democrats have their backs against the wall. What are they going to do? How are they going to turn this thing around? They're not. They're simply not. Not with Joe Biden. He's too old, too frail. It's not going to happen. And so what options do they have? Honestly, at this point, I don't think they have any options. I think they've ran out of options. I think they've waited too long. I think the copium has been too strong throughout this process. You know, the numbers were a little bit close in the earlier days, and they thought, you know, we've got some time. We could turn this thing around. But they don't have a black swan event like they did in 2020. And they don't have control of the narrative as much as they did back then. Too many people have woken up. Too much has happened. And the current reality is too dire for them to gaslight the people into voting for him. Their last hope is literally trying to put Donald Trump in prison, which they might actually be gearing for. We're getting reports that supposedly Joe Biden is preparing a White House address following the Manhattan verdict in Alvin Bragg's hush money case. I don't know whether they know something we don't, and whether the strategy has been, in play basically since the start, or whether they're just hoping to capitalize on the situation regardless of what the result is, what the jury verdict is. But again, I think no matter what happens, it's going to backfire. If the verdict comes out guilty, Trump's going to go up in the polls. If it comes out not guilty, Trump's going to go up in the polls, regardless of whatever the frick Joe Biden says following the verdict itself. They thought they had time. They thought they could turn it around. But Joe Biden just doesn't possess the skills to be able to pull that off. There's too much chaos, too much crisis. The economy is too stagnant to take victory laps or to, build winning rhetoric around. And so it seems like Joe Biden is doomed to be a single-term president. Maybe that talking point is going to backfire quite spectacularly on the Democrats. They love to insult Donald Trump as a one-term president. Well, he might be getting his second term here, and the real one-term failure of a president is going to be their guy, the vegetable that they decided to get elected. The alternative is a last-ditch Hail Mary effort, swapping Joe Biden for somebody else ahead of the convention, but obviously even that won't work. Even if it's Michelle Obama. That would only signal dysfunction, and it would prove to everybody that they've been full of crap this entire time, telling us that Joe Biden's the man for the job, the best man for the job, he's the best, he's the greatest, only to pull him out at the last second because they don't have faith in him. That would change absolutely nothing, and it's not like the Democrats have a wide pool of talent to pull from. Everybody who's even remotely charismatic or talented or somewhat grounded from a common sense perspective gets shunned in Democrat circles. The Jimmy Dores of the world, the Tulsi Gabbards, they get called extremists or alt-right or Russian agents and exiled from the party. So what are the Democrats left with? Pete Buttigieg? Gavin Newsom? Kamala Harris? Not gonna work. The Democrats made their bed, now they get to sleep in it, and that bed is Joe Biden. All I gotta say is, good luck. And hopefully in, 5.5, 6 months here, we'll be saying good riddance to this failure of a president, the least popular president in modern history, the worst president in modern history, Piss Pants Joe. Anyways, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.